Hi everyone, my name is Carrie from your San Antonio Zoo. I'm here with one of our reticulated giraffes. His name is Alan. So we're just going to feed him and I'm going to talk about giraffes. And if you have any questions, just put them on the screen and I'll answer them towards the end of this Facebook Live. So like I said, this guy is Alan. He's our oldest male giraffe that we have here. So he's actually the father of the two other boys that we have. His name is Alan, again. And then we have Cosmo over to the left of me. And then way over there we have Braden. So Cosmo is the second oldest and then Braden is the youngest. Braden and Cosmo are about 18 months apart. And then like I said, Alan is their dad. Braden and Cosmo are, half brothers. So their moms are in the Gladys Porter Zoo in Brownsville, Texas. And then when Alan was done with his business, he came back to us. And then when Braden and Cosmo were about 3 years old, they were done being part of Mom's herd and they came to us as well. So if you can see, I'll try and get him to stick his tongue out pretty far. So his tongue is nice and purple, and that has a very specific reason. So because they do eat with their tongue and they stick their tongue out, they're not a whole lot of shade when you're 17 feet tall. So because their tongue is purple and because they use their tongue all the time, it actually helps to keep their tongue from getting sunburned. So if you've ever burned your tongue on hot chocolate or coffee, you know it hurts, and it can hurt for a couple of days. And when you have to use your tongue to get all of your food, it does get a little painful. So that purple and dark color really helps them from getting a sunburn. So if you look at the print that is on his skin, that is what we call a reticulated print. So that's why their name is reticulated, or their species is a reticulated giraffe. So that's just going to be any sort of dark patch surrounded by a white or lighter border. When you guys come in for any sort of foot traffic, you can also see our reticulated pythons. They are going to be towards the front of the zoo by the Komodo dragons. And they also have the same kind of print. So their species name is based off of how they look. There are 4 to 7 species of giraffe, depending on who you ask. Some people put a couple of species together. Some people split them into completely different species. So reticulated is one. You're going to have Maasai as another. And then you have Rothschild and Southern and Northern. There's one more that I can't remember, but it's also part of one of that where you just lump it all together. So if you look at the top of Alan's head here, you can see he has these bumpy little things. So those are not horns. Those are actually called ossicones. There are only 2 species in the world that have ossicones. It's going to be these guys and the okapi. So okapi are actually related to giraffes, even though their hind end looks like a zebra. And in okapis, only the males have ossicones, but in giraffes, both females and males have these ossicones. One way that is really easy to tell them apart from males and females is on these guys. Since they're all males, their ossicones are going to be bald at the top. And for females, since they do not spar, they keep their little fluffy pom-poms of fur at the top of their ossicones. So speaking of sparring, yes, these boys do spar or fight a little bit. It's never as serious as it could get in their natural habitat. Because there is no female here, they don't necessarily need to spar for anything other than being the boss for the day. And that's going to be where they put their rear ends together and kind of lower their necks and swing their necks at each other. And that's how they lose the hair on the top of their ossicones. In the wild, it can get pretty serious and it can lead to broken bones in their neck or their skull. So if we were to ever bring a female into our facility, we would send 2 males away so that we avoid anything like that. So a really cool fact about these guys is even though their necks are about 6 feet long, they only have 7 vertebrae, which is the exact same number that humans have as well. So you and I have the same number of neck bones as a giraffe. So ours are only about the size of like half of my pinky finger, Well, theirs are the size of my head. So it's a little bigger. So these guys are going to be found in Africa. They are going through what's called a silent extinction. So not a whole lot of people think about giraffes when they think about things going extinct. You're going to think more about pandas and other charismatic animals. Elephants. Not a whole lot of people realize that giraffes are also being hunted and poached for their hide and for their meat. In the past 2 years, we've dropped from 40 to 50% of their population. So their numbers are dropping pretty quickly. So they've all joined us now. So that's Braden. He's got a baby face. His face is really smooth. As he gets older, he will get more bumpy little areas on his face. It's just kind of calcification of the bone. And it acts as a football helmet for when they are sparring. So it kind of, moves around the, he's being goofy. It helps to disperse, that's the word I'm looking for, helps to disperse the impact of any sort of sparring. So just more surface area. So he's got a baby face. He's only, I think, 9 now. And then Cosmo's also 9. I think they turn 9 together for a little bit, and then Alan over here is almost going to be 12. So they can reproduce at a pretty young age. 3 to 4 is where it's going to be more likely, but any earlier than that, they are not anywhere near the status that they need to be within a herd. And they all do have different personalities. They have different characteristics as well to tell them apart from each other. So Alan's going to have the bumpiest head. He also has these really pretty rosettes on his shoulder. You might be just perfectly not able to see it. There you go. So on his shoulder you can see those really perfect circles that kind of have like a target in the middle. And then he's also a little bit darker than everybody else. Cosmo has a C-shaped scar on his rear end. You can actually see it. It's on this side. So very helpful that Cosmo ended up with a C-shaped scar. And then Braden's just smaller. To me, he has a really baby face. He's the lightest. Otherwise, that's kind of his only really remarkable feature, is that he's just lighter than the rest of them. When you start working with them and you have seen their faces every day for months, they all really do look different. Their faces are really different from each other. But when I first started working with them, it was always, I don't know who's who, and I had to really look at their characteristics, these really specific things to figure out. But now they're all very different to me. So giraffes have really, really long tongues, as you guys saw, and it's actually proportionate to their height. So a 17-foot tall giraffe is going to have a 17-inch long tongue, and it grows with them. So giraffes are born at about 6 feet, so their tongues are going to be about 6 inches long. I think that's all of the facts that I can think of that I have logged away in my brain. So if you guys have any questions, no? So we'll just kind of watch them being really cute. I will get some lettuce. I'm attached to a mic that's attached to the phone, so we have to walk as one. It's pretty fun. It's way back here. So we do some training with them. Whenever we have people up here feeding them, we do not allow anybody to touch them on the face. In addition to that being a training behavior that we want to make sure we are training correctly, we also, as people, we love to reach out and touch things. And I don't blame you guys. They're adorable. But I try and remind people that this is them kind of having a snack, and you wouldn't want somebody to come to your house while you're eating your Cheetos and grab your face. It's not super fun. But also it's a training behavior that we want to make sure that they are comfortable with. So we don't ever want them to have a bad experience when they're being touched. So we do touch them for training, and we usually try and work with the ears and the eyes to make sure that if we ever need to get blood or give them any sort of ointment on their ears or eyes, that they are comfortable with us doing that. If you look past these guys over there, you can see their barn, and attached to it is what we call a chute or a tamer. We do ask them to go inside, walk inside, close the door behind them, and then we can do all sorts of things. We can open up little doors at the bottom where you can see their feet and do some sort of hoof work. And then it also just puts us at their eye level so we can get really up close and personal with their face. Make sure there are no issues. So I'm trying to feed Brayden. Oh, well, he's being too slow. So this is just romaine lettuce. This is kind of a snack. It's mostly water. It does not a whole lot for them nutritionally, but it's really easy to feed and have other people feed. If you look behind me, there's a couple of bundles of browse, and that is going to be what we give them for more nutritional value. They get about 50 pounds of browse a day, and then they will get about another 50 pounds of grain that is made specifically for giraffes. So not a lot of people know that there are companies that make grain and chow and kind of like dried food that is specifically for these wild exotic animals. So we don't just go to the feed store and buy, a bucket of corn or whatever for these guys. They get little pellets that are made specifically for wild herbivores. So for, what was her name? Jessica. Your question about if there's any possibility for breeding, it really is just going to depend. I don't think so. We would have to probably bring a different male in. So he's already bred a few times, so he is genetically represented within the gene pool. Brayden's actually castrated, and Cosmo, just because he's got his genes, he's probably well represented in the gene pool as well. Again, if we did have a female here, we would have to send 2 other males away, and that's going to be a lot of movement, and we have to be able to have another zoological facility that has space for 2 males or another male. We also don't really have the facility to breed a calf, so you want to make sure that you are prepared for pretty much anything life throws at it. So if, say, the mom doesn't really know how to raise a calf yet and we have to do it ourselves, we don't really have anywhere in this facility that we could do that easily. So we'd have to build something so that we could safely house a calf if we needed to. So it'd be a really far in the future. So Sharon's asking what we do for them in the heat. So we will give them ice blocks every now and then. Our wonderful nutrition keepers will give us a bucket, and they'll fill it with ice or fill it with water, put a chain in it, and then freeze it overnight in their huge walk-in freezer. And then they'll give it to us whenever it's fully frozen, and we can hang it up and they'll lick it. Sometimes we'll put goodies in there like apples or lettuce, or sometimes we'll just put apple juice and dilute it and make it just like a really good ice pop. You're really rude. Otherwise, these guys have a really, really good way of just adapting to the heat. Because they live in Africa, they're kind of used to it. Their fur that you see is actually really, really short. It's very coarse. It's not like a huge, fluffy coat of fur. So they're not covered in, like long fur or anything like that either. We don't do a whole lot else otherwise. There is a pool, but they don't swim in it. For our birds and otherwise, though, they will take a dip. But otherwise, as long as there's shade structure for them, they'll go underneath if they're feeling really hot. But these guys are really good at taking care of themselves with the heat. What was the name? Tammy asked if they have shelter from the rain. So if you kind of look around, it looks like they don't. But as keepers, we look at the forecast every day, sometimes more than a handful of times a day. A lot of us have about 3 different weather apps that we use to determine what the forecast for the day is. If there is a chance of rain or if it is actively raining, we will open up the gate over there and thank you. The gate over there and let them go into that barn, and we will open up that barn all the way over there and they can get out of the rain like that. Jessica is asking if the guests are allowed to feed them right now. So when we are not doing drive-through zoo and you can walk into the zoo, you can feed them. As far as I know, it's a whole day thing. So instead of doing what we used to do where it's at certain times, because we don't want people congregating all in one line, it's throughout the entire day. And you can feed them. You do have to wear a mask and you do have to sanitize your hands before you touch any of the food that you're going to feed them. But yes, when we are doing walkthrough right now, you can feed them. So Alma is asking where they sleep. Every night as the keepers, we open up that barn for them and they can go in there if they choose. Really though, they'll sleep wherever. Giraffes don't really sleep more than about 3 hours a day, and even then, a lot of that is going to be them just kind of zoning out. And you'll see Cosmo's really bad about it. He'll just stand in one spot and stare, and that's him sleeping. But I've also seen all 3 of them laying down. In their natural habitat, you're really never going to see a giraffe laying down. It's dangerous for them to do that, but because these guys know that there are no predators for them, they are comfortable with laying down. So this little spot between this island and the rocks back there is one of Cosmo's favorite spots. Every now and then Alan likes to give us a heart attack and he'll lay down behind all of those rocks back there and put his head down to where you can't see him, and makes us think that we've lost an entire giraffe. So that's always fun for him. He doesn't do it very often though, but also it's not really like us humans where at night they're sleeping and in the daytime they're awake. It's just kind of 15 to 30 minutes of just either laying down and sleeping or zoning out, but they really don't sleep that much. So Rachel's asking if there is a baby. Technically no. Braden's kind of our baby though. He is the youngest. He's only about 9. And he does have a baby face in my eyes, but we do not have a calf right now. All right, so I'm running out of lettuce. If there are any more questions, now's your chance. Otherwise, we'll go until I'm out of lettuce and then we'll be done. Cosmo's being really gross, so Alan is probably peeing right now, and if catch him doing that, oh wait, maybe not. So as boys, they will smell and sometimes lick each other's pee, and that is how they determine what is going on pheromone, hormone wise. They'll do what's called a phlegm response, where they lift their front lip up and just kind of let the air pass over what's called their Jacobson's organ, or Jacob's organ. And that just kind of lets them know what's going on. They'll do it with females, and that'll tell them everything that they need to know. If the female's ready to breed, if the female has a calf that's still nursing, all sorts of information. Braden, do you want the last piece? Good job. All right, guys, that's it. Thanks so much for joining, and thank you guys for asking questions. They are all really, really good questions. So, like I said, my name's Karen. Thank you so much for joining us here at your San Antonio Zoo. And the boys appreciate having a whole tub of lettuce to themselves. Thank you, guys.